K-drama cycle begins. What happened in Hong Kong was never meant to become public. It wasn't announced through press releases or teased with official posters. It began quietly, the way most industry shifts do, through patterns that only fans and insiders know how to read. A cancelled appearance here. A sudden schedule gap there. A flight that didn't line up with any known fan event. And then, just as questions began to form, everything exploded at once. The first shock came late at night. Screenshots started circulating across fan communities, initially dismissed as edits or fan fiction. But the longer people stared, the harder it became to ignore the details. A contract page. A watermark from a legitimate production firm. Filming timelines listed in blocks that align far too perfectly with Lingling's sudden absence from public schedules. The title was blurred, but the structure was unmistakable. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't speculation. This looked like a real film contract. Fans froze. Lingling had always been careful. Her rise had been steady, calculated, protected. She rarely hinted at future work until everything was locked in. That's why this leak hit so hard. It wasn't just that a new project existed. It was the scale of it. International co-production. Distribution notes referencing multiple markets. A filming location code that fans quickly traced back to Hong Kong and nearby regions. Within hours, theories turned into timelines. Fans revisited old interviews where Lingling spoke about wanting to challenge herself beyond familiar genres. They connected dots between her recent language lessons, her sudden training breaks, and her noticeably more reserved public demeanor over the past months. It all started to make sense. But just as everyone was still processing Lingling's leap into a new cinematic stage, something else happened. Something visual. Something undeniable. ORM appeared. Not on a fan cam. Not at an airport mobbed by phones. But at a Dior-linked event that luxury watchers immediately recognized as significant. This wasn't a public show. This wasn't influencer seating. ORM's placement said everything. Front-facing angles. Controlled lighting. A deliberate camera linger. Fashion insiders don't guess when it comes to these things. They know. ORM wasn't there by accident. And suddenly, the narrative shifted. This wasn't just about Lingling moving forward. This was about LINGORM entering a new phase altogether. Fans noticed ORM's styling first. Dior doesn't dress casually when they're testing global potential. The silhouette, the tailoring, the restraint, it was all very intentional. No flashy branding. No logo-heavy statements. Just quiet confidence. The kind Dior reserves for faces they want audiences to grow into. Photos began circulating from different angles, and with each one, the message became clearer. ORM wasn't being introduced to Dior's world. She was already inside it. That's when fans started asking the bigger question. Why Hong Kong? Why now? Hong Kong has always been more than a travel destination for the entertainment industry. It's a gateway, a testing ground, a bridge between markets. Careers don't just pass through Hong Kong. They pivot there. Lingling's leaked contract and ORM's Dior positioning happening in the same city, in the same window, was not coincidence. Industry watchers knew it. Fans felt it. For years, LINGORM had been defined by togetherness, joint appearances, shared projects, matched energy. But Hong Kong marked something different. This was about separation without distance, growth without fracture. Two individual paths rising at the same time, intersecting on a global stage. The fandom reaction was instant and emotional. Some fans celebrated, calling this the glow-up era they had been waiting for. Others panicked, afraid that individual expansion meant the end of LINGORM as they knew it. Comment sections filled with mixed emotions. Pride, fear, excitement, nostalgia. Lingling remained silent. That silence said more than any statement could have. She didn't deny the leak. She didn't clarify it. She didn't post distractions. Instead, she disappeared further from public view. And in this industry, silence often means contracts are still being protected. More details emerged slowly, not from official sources, but from patterns. A production team quietly followed by industry insiders. A director Lingling had once mentioned admiring suddenly appearing in Hong Kong. A language coach posting vague captions about new challenges. Meanwhile, ORM's Dior moment kept unfolding. One appearance turned into two, then three. Always subtle, always controlled. Dior never rushed the announcement, which only fueled speculation further. Fans began comparing her treatment to other global ambassadors during their early stages. The similarities were impossible to ignore. This wasn't just fashion. This was positioning. For the first time, fans began to talk about LINGORM not just as a pairing, but as a brand ecosystem. Lingling moving into serious film territory. ORM stepping into luxury global influence. Two different lanes. Same destination. Hong Kong became the symbol of that shift. The city that once hosted fan meetups and casual sightings had transformed into the backdrop of reinvention. Every photo taken there now felt historic in hindsight. Every unnoticed detail suddenly mattered. One particular image sent fans spiraling. Lingling, masked and dressed down, spotted entering a private building known to house international production offices. No entourage, no announcement, just quiet purpose. Within minutes, fans overlaid the location with the leaked contract's production codes. They matched. That was the moment disbelief turned into acceptance. This was real. ORM, on the other hand, leaned into visibility without overexposure. She didn't speak about Dior. She didn't tag the brand. She let the visuals speak. And they spoke loudly. Dior insiders began subtly engaging with her content. Stylists followed her accounts. Editors liked photos. This is how luxury brands say yes without saying anything at all. Fans who once feared distance began to notice something else. Even as Lingling and ORM pursued separate paths in Hong Kong, they never contradicted each other's momentum. No conflicting schedules. No awkward silence. No distancing language. Instead, they moved like two people who understood the long game. Industry analysts started calling it one of the smartest transitions they had seen. Protect the bond publicly. Expand individually privately. Meet again on a larger stage. The leak, ironically, may have accelerated fan readiness. Instead of shocking people later, it allowed audiences to process the change gradually. By the time official confirmations arrive, many fans will already be emotionally aligned with the shift. As days passed, Hong Kong slowly returned to normal. Fan cams disappeared. Sightings stopped, but the impact lingered. LINGORM had crossed a line. Not into controversy, not into chaos, into evolution. Lingling's rumored film promised depth, complexity, and a break from familiar comfort zones. ORM's Dior emergence promised longevity, influence, and cultural reach beyond screens. Together, these moves signaled something rare in the industry. A duo not clinging to a single image, but expanding without erasing what made them loved. Fans now wait differently. Not desperately. Not anxiously, but knowingly, because Hong Kong wasn't the end of a story. It was the quiet beginning of LINGORM's global chapter. And when the official announcements finally come, they won't feel sudden. They'll feel inevitable. The days that followed felt unusually quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that comes right before something irreversible happens. Fans knew it. Industry watchers knew it. Even casual observers could sense that whatever unfolded in Hong Kong was still echoing behind the scenes. Lingling remained out of sight, but not out of conversation. Her name began appearing in places it hadn't before. Film circles, private casting discussions, international forums that rarely discussed idols or crossover stars suddenly mentioned her as a serious contender. That alone told fans everything they needed to know. This wasn't a cameo. This wasn't a safe role designed to test waters. This was a calculated leap. People revisited her past work with new eyes. Scenes once praised for emotional subtlety now felt like preparation. Interviews where she spoke about wanting to be uncomfortable suddenly sounded prophetic. Even her choice to step back from constant public exposure over the last year began to look intentional rather than coincidental. Fans started to understand that the Lingling they were about to meet next would not be the same one they had known before. At the same time, ORM's fashion trajectory continued to quietly accelerate. Dior's strategy became clearer the more fans studied it. They weren't pushing her loudly because they didn't need to. The luxury world thrives on suggestion, not explanation. ORM fit that language perfectly. Her image balanced softness with authority, youth with composure. She didn't look like someone chasing relevance. She looked like someone being prepared for longevity. And that difference mattered. More sightings followed. Not dramatic, not chaotic. Just enough to confirm that ORM was being integrated into rooms that only opened for long-term investments. Stylists began referencing her look in trend discussions. Editors used her photos when talking about new Asian faces redefining elegance. These weren't fan-driven conversations anymore. They were professional ones. That's when fans began to shift their mindset again. Instead of asking whether Lingorm would survive this era, they started asking how big it could become. The fear of separation slowly transformed into a realization. If Lingling and ORM had stayed exactly where they were, comfort would have eventually turned into stagnation. What was happening now was risky, yes, but it was also necessary. Some fans noticed something subtle but powerful. Despite their individual silence, Lingling and ORM never allowed narratives to pit them against each other. No solo promotions that erased the other. No interviews reframing their bond as just a phase. No distancing language. In an industry where rebranding often involves rewriting the past, their restraint spoke volumes. They weren't undoing Lingorm. They were protecting it while letting it grow. As weeks passed, insiders hinted that Lingling's project was being positioned for international festivals rather than purely commercial release. That single detail changed everything. Festival films demand vulnerability. They strip actors of familiar armor. They don't allow safety nets. For Lingling to step into that space meant she was ready to be judged not as a name, but as an artist. Fans braced themselves. ORM's path, meanwhile, leaned into visibility without noise. Her Dior connection began influencing how other brands interacted with her. Invitations shifted. Conversations deepened. Suddenly, ORM wasn't just being styled. She was being consulted. That transition marked the difference between being a face and becoming a presence. People who once dismissed her as simply half of a beloved duo began re-evaluating her entirely. Hong Kong, in retrospect, became the dividing line. Before Hong Kong, Lingorm was rising. After Hong Kong, Lingorm was expanding. And expansion is always misunderstood before it's celebrated. Some fans still struggled. Comment sections occasionally filled with nostalgia-heavy posts, longing for simpler times. But even those posts carried pride beneath the longing. Because deep down, everyone knew that staying small had never been an option for either of them. The industry doesn't wait. Careers either move forward or they get replaced. Lingling and ORM chose forward. Now, anticipation feels heavier than excitement. Not because fans are worried, but because they understand the stakes. When the film is officially announced, Lingling will no longer be sheltered by familiarity. When Dior makes ORM's role public, she will be held to a global standard few ever reach. But fans are ready. They've already walked through the uncertainty. They've already accepted the change. And when the next chapter opens, it won't feel like a betrayal of the past. It will feel like its natural conclusion. Because Hong Kong wasn't just a trip. It was the moment Lingorm stopped being a possibility and started becoming a legacy.